Sukugar. This is Tracer reporting on the latest from Din Djarin, our local exterminator who continues his quest to rescue baby Grogu from the clutches of Moff Gideon. After acquiring Moff Gideon's location, the Djarin and company set out to rescue baby Grogu. Their first step was to ambush the Lambda shuttle carrying Dr. Pershing. Slave 1 made quick work of the shuttle's defenses with the right application of ion shot, and the Djarin and Kara boarded the vessel. The more fanatical of the two pilots quickly took Dr. Pershing hostage, and pulled a commissar and the less fanatical pilot.
On charges of cowardice, you are sentenced to death!
In an unusual move, the pilot attempted to aggravate Kara by mocking her about the destruction of Alderaan, claiming he had been on the first Death Star. I was confused as to how he knew Kara was from Alderaan, but Ular Rusular Morse has provided a theory.
I believe it has to do with the rebel tattoo Kara has on her left eye, which the Imperial referred to as a teardrop. I suspected then that this was given to members of the Alliance military who survived the destruction of Alderaan to signify the planet's sacrifice, and due to the pilot immediately identifying her as a drop trooper, I suspect a high number of these soldiers were Alderaanians and cultivated a reputation for themselves.
Because of this, Kara just decided to shoot him in the face. I'm not entirely sure what the imp thought mocking someone pointing a blaster at you was going to accomplish, but I doubt he thought that far ahead. Additionally, we learned that Dr. Pershing is in fact a cloner, signified by his Kamino and clone patch, which lines up with our freelancer analyst theory's suggestion that Gideon was planning to take Grogu to Kamino, where more advanced genetic equipment would allow him to create Sith troopers. With Pershing in hand, the Djarin and company made their way to a world I suspect to be Dantooine, due to the Old Republic processing plants and flat plain terrain seen on both worlds. There, he and Boba Fett went inside a diner to recruit Bo-Katan Kryze and Casca Reeves to their cause. Before I continue, I must state the obvious. The two Night Owl Mandalorians displayed an unusual hostility and smug arrogance towards the Djarin and Boba Fett, with Casca herself even provoking a fight with Boba. Considering that the Djarin was, in their own words, a member of a group of fanatics, but showed no issue working with him, I find it strange that they were suddenly so dismissive here. While I could somewhat understand their dislike of Boba Fett for being a clone, due to their part in the occupation of Mandalore, the simple fact is that Boba has more than earned his stripes in the most traditional way, by being a bounty hunter. Additionally, this attitude doesn't make sense when you consider that Bo-Katan is in desperate need of allies, signified by her demanding Gideon's cruiser for her war effort. I suspect then to be the work of the celestial being calling himself Peyton Reed, who has been reported tampering with the events of my report. The man seems to have something of a shtick for making the female of a given species abruptly hostile to males as a form of competing with them, as was reported done to the events of the so-called Ant-Man and the Wasp incident. All I can say is that it makes these people look like a bunch of Lehari de Koots. Though I will give Sasuke credit, the DDT wrestling move invented by Jake the Snake Roberts was pretty nice to see. Anyhow, Bo-Katan and Reeves joined Djarin's posse, concocting a plan to have Boba Fett chase the Lambda shuttle right into Moff Gideon's cruiser, using it effectively as a Trojan horse, and from there, Bo-Katan's team would take the bridge while the Djarin grabs Grogu in the confusion. Before I continue, I would first like to comment on the interesting method the Arcatine's cruiser uses to launch its TIE fighters. It uses a launching system similar to the launching tubes of the Battlestar Galactica, where a selector crane positions the fighter into effectively a catapult system. I have our agents in the Colonial Cobalt government investigating this link. Upon boarding the cruiser, Bo-Katan and her posse quickly tore their way through the Imperial defenders. To my dismay, the small unit tactics displayed by all members of the attacking team in previous reports was completely lost here. Rather than taking cover and leapfrogging under covering blaster fire seen before, they instead marched straight into the stormtroopers, engaging them unnecessarily in close combat with very flashy moves. Worse, the Imperials' rank and competence seems to have skyrocketed in this incident, as multiple times the Imperials had a chance to eliminate the boarders or even attempt to trap them, such as seen by the defenders of the Gazanti transport. And yet, the Imperials were just weight to a scythe. I once again credit this to the interference of Peyton Reed, who seems incapable of showing off military tactics and even went out of his way to make Kara look stupid. She's an ex-paratrooper, not a damn Utrikov. Curiously, though, Fennec seems to be the one to shine in this incident by comparison. I wonder if Reed is trying to please certain constituents through this very unusual move. Anyhow, the Jaren quickly made his way towards Grogu, but was ambushed by the now awakening Dark Troopers, confirmed by Dr. Pershing to be Phase 3 droids. The Jaren quickly attempted to lock them in their deployment room, but one broke free and proceeded to pummel the Jaren in a wall very similar to the Terminators of Skynet. Nothing the Jaren threw at him was capable of even slowing him down, with blasters, flamethrowers, and rockets unable to penetrate the armor, with only his spear through his neck working. From there, the Jaren opened the airlock and sucked the rest into space. This encounter has raised a few questions. First, why did Dark Troopers need to be kept in a power-down state when the droid technology seen by the armies of the Confederacy allows them to function continuously during battle? I know they possess greater cognitive functions, they clearly weren't on the same level as IG-11. The only possibility could be that they use so much power that they need to be constantly recharged, or were in a state of repair when the attack happened. Second, if the Dark Trooper armor is practically invulnerable to blaster fire, why has the Remnant not outfitted their soldiers with similar, scaled-down armor? I realize this would be expensive to do, but the Remnant only has a finite number of soldiers. Wasting resources on junk equipment for a galactic army for the same cost of production that could be put into making better gear for a comparatively smaller series of enclaves is a textbook example of insanity.
Insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again, expecting to change. That is crazy.
Third, the pummeling the Dark Trooper gave to the Jaren should have left him with a bad concussion, such as seen when he was hit by an explosive. While a freelancer analyst named Shadowversity has proposed the idea that his armor has inertial dampeners, it wouldn't prevent him from getting a hefty measure of concussive force, such as when he fell off a sandcrawler and was knocked unconscious. Fourth, why weren't these troopers used instead of a company of stormtroopers to grab baby Grogu during the tragedy episode? I must really question Gideon's tactical competency, as he's throwing men he doesn't have at problems he doesn't need to.
The Imperials, Tracer. What did you expect?
I expect them to be competent at least most of the time, considering they ruled a crippling galaxy for 25 years.
They didn't do a good job of that, though.
Oh, butt out, you two. We'll discuss this later. Anyhow, the Jaren found Moff Gideon waiting in Grogu's cell, with a darksaber at his throat. Gideon explained that he had taken the weapon from Bo-Katan, and that whoever held the weapon had the most legitimate claim to the Mandalorian throne. He also explained that he wanted Grogu specifically for his blood, which again makes me believe his plan was to create Sith troopers. Considering how weak Grogu seemed, I suspect he already drained a considerable amount from him, but the whereabouts of it are currently unknown. Gideon then offered Grogu's freedom in exchange for letting him go, only to then try and backstab the Jaren. The Jaren engaged him in a brief duel, where his armor and spear were able to stand up to the power of the lightsaber, though I should note that the spear grew hot any time the weapons contacted. If given enough time, I believe a lightsaber can melt through Beskar. However, this was not enough, and the Jaren defeated Gideon in combat, claiming the darksaber. This proved problematic, as now the darksaber belonged to the Jaren and not Bo-Katan through the rite of combat. Even when the Jaren attempted to offer the weapon to her, she refused, and she would have to fight him for it. This does contradict an earlier instance when Sabine Wren gave the weapon to her as a gift after stealing it from Maul. Ular Rusalor Salander has a theory on the subject.
There are three primary things to consider. First, when Sabine took the dark saber, Maul didn't fight her over it and effectively gave it up. This may overrule the claim decree that it must be earned in combat, thus allowing Sabine to possibly give it to Bo-Katan instead. Second, Clan Kryze and Wren are both part of House of Vizsla, effectively making the two surrogate cousins. As seen in the monarchies across the galaxy, titles can be exchanged within the same family, such as a younger prince handing the title of king to his older brother. Third, and I feel this is the most important thing to consider, Bo-Katan's claim to the darksaber was not through the traditional rite of combat, as seen with the Mask of Mandalore during the time of the Neo-Crusaders, and this act may have alienated many of the traditional clans. Worse, it was under Bo-Katan's leadership that Mandalore was taken and the clans exiled, with her losing the darksaber to Gideon. As such, she has likely lost the respect of many of the clans, and only through acquiring the right to rule the right way can she then rule Mandalore again. We Mando are stupidly stubborn like that.
Before the matter could be tabled, the Dark Troopers arrived and began to attempt to batter down the door. However, An X-Wing arrived, and Luke Skywalker arrived on scene to begin destroying the droids one by one with grim efficiency, culminating in him even replicating his dad's hallway scene and crushing a droid of his mind for good measure.
Oh, that was amazing.
I agree. But why didn't he show up earlier?
Because the celestial beings are griffing morons.
Who's he?
I don't know. Who the Manda are you?
I'm just keeping an eye on the Jedi, like you are keeping an eye on the Mandalorians.
Right. Morris, get him out of here.
There's no need. I'm leaving. Just tell DeJaren he really needs to use his jetpack more. Probably wouldn't have ended up in this situation if he had.
Curiously, Baby Grogu sensed Luke's presence upon him arriving, no doubt attracted to the familiar sense of a fellow Jedi as seen with Ahsoka Tano. Well, I have to wonder if he was familiar to Luke's presence because of his dad. Anyhow, Luke and R2-D2 arrived to claim Baby Grogu, telling DeJaren that he will never be safe so long as his abilities remain untrained. Thankfully, DeJaren accepted this, removing his helmet for his baby son so that he could see him as he truly was, promising that one day they will see each other again. I have to admit, the entire scene from the Dark Trooper pummeling down the door, Luke Skywalker slashing his way through droids, and him taking Grogu to DeJaren saying goodbye, reminded me greatly of when Qui-Gon Jinn took Anakin for training some 40 years ago. Oh, Solander had his other ideas.
Oh, I don't deny the Qui-Gon analogy. Quite fitting, really, since many believe the green crystal Luke is using may in fact be Qui-Gon's. However, I believe when DeJaren removed his helmet for Grogu, that was as similar to when Darth Vader did the same for Luke, the father revealing his true face to his son. Either way, quite tearful.
Also, I must admit that Luke Skywalker's face looks strange. Something to do with the eyes, I think. Did he have some kind of computer-generated surgery? It's quite strange.
Check out this chart. You see, as artificial representations of humans become more and more realistic, they reach a point where they stop being endearing and become creepy.
Tell it to me in Star Wars.
All right, we like R2-D2 and C-3PO.
They're nice.
And up here, we have a real person, like Han Solo.
He acts like he doesn't care, but he does.
But down here, we have a CGI stormtrooper or Tom Hanks in the Polar Express.
I'm scared. Get me out of there.
And that's the problem. You're in the valley now, and it's impossible to get out.
I suppose another one of our freelancer analysts, Victor Van Doomcock, must be quite pleased. He predicted the use of this technology in Luke months ago. Afterwards, Ula Rusalor Morse reported that Boba Fett was spotted on Tatooine, which does make me wonder if DeJaren was riding shotgun at all during that point.
In the aftermath of Jabba the Hutt's death, Bib Fortuna took over, and even got as fat and disgusting as Jabba himself. However, Boba Fett had Fennec arrived and wiped out the palace guards and then shot Fortuna himself. Thus Boba sat upon Jabba's throne, poised to take over. I must admit, this sight reminded me greatly of Conan the Cimmerian when he took over the throne of Aquilonia and Red Sonja at his side. What Boba plans to do from this point forward, I cannot fathom.
Finally, time to tally up the damage, which our insurance need not worry about since they were all Imperial scum.
We can work something.
I'm starting to question exactly how the Empire kept control of their domain, seeing how well their troops do. Finally, time to tell you Baby Yoda's adorable scenes. From ugliest to cutest, we have porgs, Jar Jar Binks, love cats, baby Wookiees, and baby Ewoks.
I will give my life to protect the child. It's time to go.
I'll see you again. I promise.
Yes, this occasion called for a new ranking. This scene was beyond adorable, it was truly touching. A scene that could only be had between a father and his son. I just hope this will not be the last we see of him. With that finished, I conclude my report and submit it for your examination. Retorche me, Vod.